record. Thank you so much, Amelia. And we also want to get to know who's in the room. So if you could head over to the chat and say hello, maybe share your name and organization, it'd be great to get a bit of a sense of who's here and where you're joining from. I'll say a little bit about the Health Anchors Learning Network, and then I'm going to hand over to my colleague Ollie, who's going to frame this session and talk to you a little bit about why we're having it today and some of the early insights from our work in this space. So some of you, I know some of you are very familiar to me. Some of you have been involved in HALN before. Stands for the Health Anchors Learning Network, and it is a national UK-wide network of organisations who are taking anchor action. It's been running for 5 years. I think we might even be going into our 6th year now. And we run a range of events, some of which are big webinars like this, some of which are smaller communities of practice and learning networks of people who are really seeking to apply anchor action in their local areas. And we have a great newsletter. So if you're not already signed up to our newsletter, I think Amelia, thank you, has just popped that link in the chat so you can sign up, and we share all of our events on there and a lot more kind of guest blogs, case studies, resources. We do a lot of learning products, and yeah, so that's the place to go if you want to get a sense of what's going on in the world of HALN. I'm going to introduce the speakers in a little while, but first I thought I would hand over to my colleague Ollie, who is going to talk a little bit about what we're covering today and why, and share a little bit more on what we're learning in this space. So over to you, Ollie.
Thank you, Julia. Great to see everyone here today. So I'm just going to quickly talk you through the event topic that we've chosen today and just talk about why we've chosen that. But I'm aware that we might have some new people in the room, given that this is our first time reaching out to a broader audience of private sector individuals, as well as our traditional public sector colleagues, BCSE colleagues, university colleagues. So starting right at the beginning, I thought I would just remind everyone what we mean when we talk about anchor organisations before I start talking about the role of businesses within that. So here at HALN, we've always understood anchor organisations as large, locally rooted organisations, so organisations that are unlikely to move. And these organisations are usually major employers in their local area, as well as having significant assets and spending power. So these organisations, because of these factors, they have a significant social, economic and environmental impact within local places. And now being an anchor organisation is all about recognising this and consciously using this impact in a way that promotes health, reduces inequalities and strengthens local communities. So it's about being intentional and with how you use your resources. Now, the anchor movement has historically focused on the role of public sector or non-profit organisations, so thinking about universities and hospitals, local councils, but this is changing. So at the end of last year, we did some research into how businesses are getting involved with the anchor movement. And we found that there were two main roles that businesses were playing as part of local anchor partnerships. So the first is thinking about how businesses can act as partners in support of other anchors and supporting, public sector anchors, for example, to achieve their anchor goals. And what do I mean by that in practice? Well, an example is, businesses working with major anchor organisations to support them to reshape their procurement processes so that maybe more local SMEs can access opportunities more easily. So in that area, we're talking about businesses working in partnership with other anchors. But the second area is thinking about businesses as anchors in their own right. So recognising that across the country, there are many large businesses that have that connection to place, and they have all the same levers at their disposal as traditional public sector anchors. So they can use this positive and economic and social impact to support inclusive local growth and to promote health. And examples in that area are all the usual things you'd expect with anchor work. So recruiting locally, supporting workforce well-being, decarbonising supply chains, or investing in community initiatives. Now, partnerships between businesses and local authorities in particular are nothing new. They've been around for a long time. But what we are seeing is an evolution in how they are becoming more and more focused around health and well-being and addressing inequalities. So there's been a noted shift from a focus in economic growth towards the term inclusive growth, and more we're seeing businesses really focusing in on improving health and tackling inequalities as part of these partnerships. And some examples of that we're seeing are cross-sector anchor networks. So more anchor networks include a range of members from both the public sector and the private sector. In some places, they're working with local chambers of commerce to represent the business voice in that area. In Leeds, I think it's the first example of a dedicated business anchor network, so bringing together all the major businesses in an area to form their own anchor network that works alongside in collaboration with the public sector anchor network. We're also noticing a range of traditional kind of economic growth partnerships that are evolving to focus on health. So thinking about those local enterprise partnerships that have been around for the last, last few years, lots of those have kind of transitioned towards inclusive economy partnership groups. And then there's the wider range of place-based initiatives that are bringing together sectors from across a local place to take action on the issues of a local area. So we'll be hearing more about the Business in the Community Pride of Place programme in a second from Farida, but there's also examples like living wage places where all the major employers in an area come together and they use their collective clout to encourage more and more employers in the local area to pay the real living wage. So that's what we've noticed at HALN. From our research, we found there's some key ingredients in terms of how you successfully bring businesses into these partnerships. So what we heard was that senior leadership buy-in is essential. Being an anchor organisation and acting as an anchor often requires, big changes to how you operate as an organisation. So getting that senior C-suite buy-in is really important. You want to be working, with businesses that have that strong connection to place. So doing a scoping exercise to think about who those businesses are and then engaging them, strategically is key. And then once businesses are interested, it's about taking time to really understand those businesses, co-design with them what the anchor initiatives and strategies that you might develop together are, recognizing that businesses kind of bring a different perspective to this and they bring their own priorities and opportunities, and that you really need to kind of recognize these as part of the setup process. And then we've also found from speaking to anchor networks that starting small can really be beneficial. Trust is a really important ingredient in terms of bringing together these collaborations and setting up these joint initiatives, and starting small and scaling carefully can help ensure that the key individuals are building that trust between organizations. So that's our introduction to the topic. It's an area we're really interested to explore more and to think more about how we can create those connections between public sector anchors and private sector anchors. I'm going to stop there and hand back to Julia for the next section.
Thank you, Ollie. And I've popped a link in the chat to the Leeds Anchor website, which has an interesting section on their business engagement. And also just wanted to say it's really interesting. We're going to, in a minute, do a Mentimeter to get a sense of where you're coming from, what perspectives you're bringing. But I'm noticing a lot of NHS, local authority, and not so many businesses. And I think there may be a few business colleagues on here, but I think a lot of the questions people may be bringing today are like, how do we engage businesses? What are the benefits of engaging businesses? And I'm really thrilled that both of our speakers are bringing a lot of insight and expertise on, yes, Melanie's here from a business. Awesome. Welcome, Melanie. Great to have you here. Okay, so there are maybe a few of you lurking in there. So what I'm going to do is if you've not come across Mentimeter before, now might be a good time to grab your phone if you've got one. You can also join via your browser. And I am going to just share my screen. So we've got hopefully you can see here a QR code. So you can either point your phone at this QR code and it should take you into the Mentimeter, or you can go to www.menti.com and enter this code here, 54986064. or you can click on the link in the chat. I can see on the bottom right-hand side, there's mid-30s heading up towards the upper 30s. So many of you are coming in here now, and I am we're going to ask you 2 questions now, and then we'll bring this back again a little bit later. So the first question I wanted to ask you is, what sector are you working in? And some of you may feel like you cross some of these sectors, particularly if you're in the ICB land, but kind of which sector are you primarily identifying with? And if you're in the other category, say more in the chat. What is the other category that you feel represents the kind of sector that you're working within? If you're just joining us, I can see a few people are just joining from the waiting room. Welcome. You should be able to just join this Mentimeter if you want to for a moment. There's a code at the top, and you can go to www.menti.com and enter that code. So huge proportion of people here coming from the NHS. Welcome. Lovely to have you here. Smaller number from local authority and the kind of other sector. And even smaller number from the voluntary sector and the business sector. So welcome. Interesting to see so many health colleagues here, and very curious about what your hopes and aspirations are for this session today. So we've got almost everyone has filled in this questionnaire. I'm just going to move us on to the next question. So we've got a lot of NHS, and this is also useful intel for our speakers. So I imagine you're looking at this thinking, I can kind of tweak my content a little bit to this group. The next question is really an open question for you. What is it you would love us to explore today? We'll be doing some Q&A later. And both Ollie and I and Elizabeth and Farida will be speaking at different points. So what are the questions you'd love us to explore? What are the kind of things that you're bringing? What made you want to come today? You should be able to write in a response to that and enter it. Great. So joint working. I'll give you a minute. Just have a think about that and enter your desires and wishes and questions. Awesome. Really, really helpful here. So there's quite a lot around understanding what are the opportunities for cross-sector working. What are some good examples for cross-sector and joint working? What do business colleagues want from NHS partners? How can we work with business to deliver employment opportunities within local supply chains? How can we ensure our offer as an anchor has substance? There's some examples of business anchors and some examples of how to effectively engage with business amongst local anchor networks. That's a really interesting question. How do we support business to understand and come with us on our anchor journey? Interesting. How to engage SMEs, really, interesting to distinguish between what it's like to engage some of the very, very large organizations who have scale and may already be involved in some of the place forums, and some of the SMEs, much smaller organizations who may still have lots to share. Approaches to maintaining long-term partnerships rather than short-term project delivery. Another interesting one. We do see lots of interesting projects and pilots, but that long-term relationship is a slightly different space. Better ways to engage businesses on workplace health. Yeah, we'll definitely be talking about that a little bit today. The capacity to coordinate an anchor network. How to best market to businesses. Yeah, so how to reach them. How do you engage them? What are they reading? Where are they going? What are they listening to? How might you reach them? Another one on procurement. And as a small business, how do I become visible to commissioners? Great question. Yeah, how do I make myself visible to commissioners and procurement teams? How to further community wealth building within businesses, how to coordinate, do joint working. There's a lot around opportunities for joint working. And what is the anchor to engage with businesses? How to manage any conflicts of interest. Yeah, interesting. So lots coming up here, which we can pick up in some of the Q&A. And I know our speakers will also speak to a couple of these points here. There's so many wonderful questions here. We'll make sure that we share the download of the Mentimeter with you after the session as well. How can anchors contribute to reducing health-related economic inactivity? How do we make commissioning accessible to local businesses? How might we need to change the language we use when engaging with local businesses? Awesome. Okay. I love this. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing here, but there's tons in there, and that gives us a lot of food for thought in terms of what we cover today. So I'm going to dive straight in. What I would say is we've got a couple of speakers doing presentations for about 10, 12 minutes each. And in between each, we're going to invite in some questions or reflections in the chat. But please do, if comments or thoughts or reflections are coming up for you as we go through the session, please do add it into the chat. I know that Ollie and I and the speakers will also be having a look there. And then we're going to try and keep at least 10 minutes at the end for proper Q&A. So first of all, I want to introduce Elizabeth, who's our first speaker. Actually, in fact, I'm going to kind of slightly introduce both at the same time and then hand over to you, Elizabeth. So we've got Elizabeth joining us, who's a population health strategist. I saw lots of population health folk in the chat, so interesting alignment there, and head of program strategy at Business for Health. So very much focused on facilitating business contributions to reducing health inequalities, and interesting perspectives from academia, government, and industry, which I'm really excited to hear. So very excited to have you here, Elizabeth. And then Farida is joining from Bradford and business in the community there, which I'm super, super excited to hear about, the head of place, and excited to bring in this kind of experience of collaborating across business, local and regional councils, and the VCSE sector. And so very excited for both of these speakers. I think they've got a huge amount to share. I'm going to hand over to you first, Elizabeth, give you kind of a bit of time to share some of your experience. And as I said, everyone else, sit back and enjoy the conversation and feel free to add in some reflections and questions as we go along. Over to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much for having me, everyone. And it's nice to see you. I have see some familiar faces, so that's always wonderful to be a part of this community. So Business as Anchors, as you saw, Business for Health is a mission-led project-based organization. So what we're really focused on is driving measurable improvements in population health, reducing inequalities, while supporting economic prosperity in the UK. And so I wanted today to spend a little bit of time behind our framework of how we've approached this, looking at a system change approach, and then also talk about some of the many questions that you brought up, why we need to look at some of the language that we engage with businesses and the emergent landscape around relational leadership. So next slide, please. So this is the business framework for health. It's been developed over the last 4 years, and we're looking at 3 pillars. If you're familiar with the Scope 3 emissions around climate, this is similar in approach, workforce health as a first pillar extended to families as well. The consumer health pillar looks at products and services that impact on health, and the wider community, pillar 3, is really about the impact business activity has on wider society. What we've developed over the last few years is looking at the interactions and the behavior at the interfaces of these pillars. So we're not just focused on workforce health, for example. We want to see the impacts in totality. On the next slide offers some recent research where we don't worry about the content, but the diagram flow represents why we're looking at this in terms of health and economic prosperity. Now, financial gain is at the very end. So this approach with businesses is essential, and it is also part of a government approach. We want to link the health and economic growth missions and fundamentally deliver that health is an asset to invest in. And this is part of our work with the Office for National Statistics in measurement and evaluation frameworks committed to developing these robust health and economic metrics that demonstrate the value of prevention and health creation. Also aligns with the government's 10-year health plan, of course. So next slide. I wanted to explore some of the nuance with business as anchors. And I know some of you have heard this before. If you were perhaps at the Southwest, I know Shani's here, looking at why we have to rethink what business as anchors actually means. So grappling with the nuance offers us a different lens to approach business. So capital, the tale of capital allocation. Any capital that businesses deploy towards pro-social efforts are always at risk of being redirected towards more traditional uses or leaving the community entirely. So what we want to encourage businesses to is look at how they deploy capital and unrestricted money that can be moved faster than government approaches, for example. And that can be a sign of a first mover. The the tale of size, and the other nuances that anchors derive their power from size, so hospitals, universities, etc. But in the business landscape, it's often those smaller businesses that qualify for that place-based criteria. So they are the longstanding members of a community, and this allows them to create strong relationships. So we really want to strengthen those aspects of the size of business as anchors. And then economic growth. I think this is one we're still grappling with as a society, is that the more scale a business reaches, the less likely they are to remain rooted in place-based improvement efforts. So we want to tackle this by encouraging anchor strategies. And this is really about giving them the opportunity to have ripple effects to society. Now, someone asked, how do businesses get into this this landscape? This was an example from Cheshire and Merseyside, that businesses really do want to contribute. So how do we make that available for them? So the next slide is just an example of how businesses can pursue anchor strategies. This is from What Works Wellbeing, no longer around, but really it was an effort to demonstrate that there is this citizen and responsibility, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, but the ripple effects are really incredible and well worth the efforts. So next slide, please. I think if you take anything away from my presentation, it's about the reframe that we can do together. And this is moving away from just economic development, which assumes a trickle-down benefits to residents, to community wealth building. And I know a lot of you know that term, but it's really about building on those existing assets and building those sustainable ecosystems. Example of this is in Preston, in England, where they use a new approach, working with the public and nonprofits to look at their procurement policies and development of local supply chains. And that came out in the research that Ollie did. Health as an asset instead of a cost. This still needs to be addressed, especially with business, because anchor strategies are defined by leadership's willingness to take a comprehensive look at the kinds of capital the organization possesses and think creatively about how to put that capital in service to the local community. So we want to change the perception that health is actually an asset to invest in and a fundamental driver of economic growth and societal well-being. And then finally, CSR, so this corporate social responsibility. This is what business language uses a lot of time. And what we're really focused on here is moving away from these one-off approaches to corporate social responsibility and move businesses towards more systemic impact. And that distinguishes approaches from anchor strategy. I want to show an example of a possible reframe that we can all get behind. So the King's Fund is hosting an event next week, Time for Bold Action, Making the Shift to Prevention. And this is their first paragraph in the invite. And I've been in the UK for 7 years, and this is the persistent message. And I know most of you resonate with it. And I think we're due for a reframe in how we galvanize action. So the next slide it's a little bit lengthy, but thanks to ChatGPT. But I just wanted to offer a more positive approach where we start to look at more on our assets, investing in healthy life expectancy, prioritizing prevention, creating conditions for people to thrive. And this is, I think, where we can all get behind together to start mobilizing action. So I'll kind of round out by talking about, next slide, please, some of the emergence around relational leadership. How do we do this together? And Julia has a great analysis that just came out recently about the challenging and changing policy context for anchor work in England. So it asks us to reflect on the question, how do we stay relevant in this and effective in this moment? And we know that anchors have assets that go beyond local service delivery. So we want to be able to shape those social and economic conditions in place. And I think a part of that can be what's happening now with the theory of change for neighborhood health. I know London is working on theirs and doing a procurement process now. So this is a really big opportunity to take this and work through those theories of change. Business for Health in particular, we are focusing on systematizing and codifying what we care about. And what do I mean by that? So we're looking at data infrastructures. We're working with the ONS Health Index team to push out local health initiatives where we all align on some of the same measurement objectives, and get this up to the national level so that we can start to invest properly in prevention and work with local authorities, and ICBs on their strategic approaches. And this is really about the systematic capture of health related data so that we have a full biopsychosocial approach to interventions. And this is what we call the prevention infrastructure. Someone asked about addressing economic inactivity. There's 5 trailblazers going off right now in the London area, and we are evaluating one of the MSK ones right now. So it's really fascinating to see. This is a massively joined up approach from not just NHS and physios, but also through to businesses and employers, and how they're creating reasonable adjustments for people to get back into work. And then, of course, you, the HALN. And the next slide talks about, most of you have seen this, hopefully, but this is a really great opportunity to align, because this is where we can look at impact management. And this came up in one of the questions too. So how strong is your anchors? UCLP's toolkit. Leeds has their business progression framework. And I think, I know someone's here from SNE, Suffolk and Northeast Essex. So they're using their anchor measurement framework into dashboards across trust. And that is their emphasis is not performance management. It's designed for learning, reflection, and understanding impact. So a couple examples from the frameworks on the next 3 slides, before I wrap up. And what I really wanted to emphasize here is that this is just examples of employment, for example, but what we can do is really start small, align on what matters for your system, and start to progress. And then the next slide, one more, Ollie, we'll finish up here, is really interesting because it looks at the business progression framework. So if you look down to number 5 there, this, I just took a snapshot. It's a yes or no question. Do you use flexible working? And it's one of the anchor approaches. But I would argue that we don't just want to know if employees use flexible working, but we want to know who takes it up, because now we're linking it to outcomes. We can pit this up against the gender pay gap, for example, and we can see where it's effective and where it's being used. So I would encourage us to continue to link these to outcomes, do some deep analysis, some disaggregation, and look at the mitigating and promotion factors that really help management practices, productivity, and overall workforce. And most of you have heard about the tube strike. Some of you may have been impacted by it, but I got into an interesting discussion on LinkedIn about, are they throwing out the health and well-being card, and just having a go at, claiming that they need more pay. And I thought that was a really interesting component, but when you dig down deep, something is happening with working conditions, right? And so this is alarm bells, and this is impacting millions of people every single day. And so I thought, we do keep hearing the alarm bells. So what is it that we can do together to help with these working conditions? So lastly, if you want to have further conversations and engage, please feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And maybe if you could drop your LinkedIn link in the chat as well, people can, if they didn't have a chance to capture the QR code, they can connect with you on there. And there's a question from Vicky about whether it's possible to find out more about the MSK Trailblazer, if there's anything else that can be shared.
Yeah, I mean, we're in the middle of the evaluation at the moment. So I will say some massive positive outcomes from patient perspective. At the moment, it is qualitative, so we still have a ways to go until we get some outcome data. But I would go back and say that prevention, the infrastructure is so important. And there was some bumps and hurdles to get this kicked off. But the teams are working really hard. And so the whole premise is that there's community appointment days, so people get off the waiting list and come in and have access to a holistic approach to their health and well-being. And that still needs to be aligned because it's different in each borough. But we have a cohesive collective health and employment coaching alongside physio. So how do we join up those? And I think that will be the biggest test of time. And they're already going for more funding to do year 2 of it. So it is working in a lot of capacity. And so how do we strengthen the partnerships with NHS, with local providers, with the coaches, and give that comprehensive support?
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I've seen one more question which I might just speak to, and then I'm going to do another very quick Menti question. So Claire has asked a great question around why there are several different anchor impact frameworks, measurement frameworks in use in England. And Elizabeth, you may have views on this. Ollie, I'll just say something briefly from a HALN perspective. There have, well, NHS England / NHS Scotland. Actually, NHS Scotland, I don't know. So those from Scotland on the call may want to comment. I'm not close enough, but I don't think they have a kind of mandated framework. But I know that the closest we have to a consistent framework that I think is in use more than others is the UCL Partners Measurement Toolkit. And the UCL Partners Toolkit, which I've just put in the chat, took an approach to look at what kind of standardized data is already collected against some of the key anchor levers, such as procurement and workforce. So their starting point was to look at what anchor, particularly health and local authority anchors, were already collecting. It's a really useful resource, but other places do have more localized impact measurement frameworks. They've chosen to develop something for their partnership that works for them. And there's a slight distinction between the impact measurement framework and then kind of self-reflection tools. So what Elizabeth, I think you were just showing there was some really great work that I've seen from Les Newby and Nikki Dennison, I think, in Leeds, who've developed some lovely self-reflection and kind of progress tools.
Yeah, I think this is part of what we need to accomplish together is we don't want the disparate frameworks because we want to be working off the same hem sheet. That doesn't mean that you have universal approaches, but it means that we're looking at it from the same lens with the same vision. And that's what's so special about it is that you can actually tailor it to your local area and in place-based approaches, and then work towards progression frameworks. I think what we still need is a link to the national picture, and this is what we're working on, Business for Health. It is a long haul. This is not easy work, but if we can start to ground some of those measurement frameworks into the national picture and demonstrate to Treasury, demonstrate to the government that these are areas worth investing in, because we see the headlines, but we don't see the nitty gritty, then we can start to develop more of an argument of why this is linking to better health outcomes or more sustainable, we all know.
Yeah. And it does look like Scotland has their own framework. So beg your pardon, I knew someone would correct me. There's a few people who've shared the link to that in the chat, which is great. Very briefly, before I come to Farida, I want to share with you one more question on the Mentimeter. So if you still have your phone with you or that link open in a browser, I am going to move us on to the next question. And I'm really curious because there's so many of you here from a public sector or voluntary sector perspective who may be trying to engage with business. Really curious to hear, what is it you've tried already? So how have you tried to reach business? Who have you spoken to? What have you tried? Have you run pilots, or are you doing work around commissioning the VCSE or SMEs with them? If you're not already in the Mentimeter, you can go to that code at the top, so menti.com, and then there's a code 54986064. I'm going to give you all a minute to have a think about this. This is really, really helpful. There's lots of expertise in the room and want to just give you all a bit of visibility over what others are trying across the UK. So a couple of people hopping in early. So inviting the Chambers of Commerce to the Anchor Advisory Group. Great, love that idea. Attending the local business network meetings, also engaging with people on LinkedIn. Nice. Attending local meetings. Great. Let's see if I give it a minute for some of you to join and just to be able to give you a minute to catch your thoughts and write. Great. So engaging the chambers of commerce, inviting businesses to community wealth building events, attending events, hosting business events at your NHS site. Great. Sending them your impact report and asking them to contact you. More for the chambers of commerce, linking up with local colleagues who work closely with local businesses, business networking events, LinkedIn, looking at ways of working with local businesses on AI, working with inward investment organizations, networking with the Federation of Small Businesses. They do great local events. I'm a member of them. They do lots of local events, convened health anchor partnership roundtables, doing free work with them to get visibility. FSB and CBI coming up again, using specific programs such as apprenticeships and levy transfers. Health innovation networks, interesting. Chambers, ongoing dialogue with members. Public health, healthy workplace offer for local businesses. So interesting seeing all of this. I'm going to leave that question open for you, for those of you who are still writing. And remember, we're going to share this download with you afterwards. So stay in there if you're still writing. But I'm going to stop that so I can bring Farida in, who's got a kind of really brilliant example of how some of this thinking and work is coming into place in Bradford. So Farida, I'm going to hand over to you. Do you want to introduce yourself, say hi, and off you go? And I'll just let you know when we've got a couple of minutes left.
Sure, yeah, thank you. Hi, my name is Farida. I am the head of place for Bradford head of place for Bradford for business in the community. So business in the community, I don't know how many of you have heard of us as an organization, but we are a 42-year-old organization. We are part of what was the Prince's Trust, now is called the King's Trust, and the King himself is our patron as well. So we are a convening, campaigning organization and consulting organization. We have a number of members in our network. So we are a membership organization, which is quite unusual for a charity. We have over 500 corporate members who we support with engaging in responsible business and being more of a responsible business going forward. So whatever the challenges are that business is facing, whether that's sustainability, whether that's internally in terms of their equality and equity metrics, in terms of race or gender, we look at all of those and we set out a plan where we can support an organization to become better and become more responsible across all those metrics. And we have place activity that happens nationally. We have various regional boards as well. So in the area covered by Bradford, we have a Yorkshire and Humber board, and we have businesses that are on those boards and lead those boards. And again, that's around leading on local activity, regional activity, where those businesses can engage. I wanted to just start off really in terms of kind of showcasing our place work on a national level by sharing a video with you, which has been made following our first place summit that we held in May of this year. So if Ollie could just play that for me, that would be great.
A warm welcome to what is a momentous day for us here at Business in the Community. It's BiTC's first ever Place Summits.
Bringing together business leaders, civic society, Andy Burnham, just talking about what makes places different and how you solve the really complicated problems by people coming together.
So many different organisations who care about place, a lot of them coming at it from a slightly different perspective.
Really the importance of listening to communities and ensuring that there's a constant feedback loop. We continue listening, iterating and adapting to what ever-changing communities are wanting from us as businesses.
Coming together to collaborate, work together is going to drive that real impact in places.
That there's a packed agenda covering the why, the how, the when of working with BiTC and supporting the Pride of Place programmes.
We need to work with other businesses in Newport to develop a long-term strategy which will really change lives.
Businesses of all sizes need to come in to be behind this great movement of the Pride of Place.
Energy and enthusiasm in the room.
Inspired by what's going on, by the positive change we can make when we work together.
Everybody has to work together and agree what the solutions are, agree what the problems are, and that's the only way you're going to solve the problems in your place.
Bringing different people together and for them to understand how they can work and coordinate their effort to make a difference.
I want people to take away that they are part of something bigger. This is a place movement that we're starting here today in Manchester 2025. We're going to do every year from here on in and grow this place movement so that everybody can learn together how to lift up communities right across the UK.
Thank you, Ollie. So I wanted to start off just by giving a bit of an overview on place and how we work in place in business and community. So I have a few slides to share with you. Hopefully this is going to work. I hope you can see the slides.
Yes.
Brilliant. Thank you. So it's very much focused on businesses, on the public sector, on charities working together to address big societal problems, and health being one of those as well. So we have been, as I say, as an organisation, we've been around for many years, and I guess we are really the sort of original levelling up charity that has been around, but not necessarily kind of called ourselves that. But we can see that there is a lot more appetite and kind of focus on working much more collaboratively to address these problems. And it's really very much focused on ensuring that people feel that pride in their place, that they feel, and there's many places that we can think of, whether that's locally, nationally, places that we've been to where there's a feeling where there are things that have happened in those communities, whether that's work falling away, or things like ex-coal mining industries, where that's kind of stopped, or other big impacts that have happened in terms of manufacturing or lack of jobs, where sometimes that pride is lost and people feel that there hasn't been anything to kind of replace that and replace the kind of hope that they had in their community, in their locality. And and that has a lot to do with the energy that you feel in that place as well. So it's really very much focused on how we can work together to bring back all the great things that people know and feel about their place, but also feel those things in their lives as well. So very much around engaging with communities that have felt left behind, and felt that initiatives that they need to kind of be able to grow and build their families and communities just haven't happened. So the inequality really across the UK is something that many people can see and feel, and I think with things like the cost of living crisis, definitely are things that people can relate to and resonate with. And we can all see, the increase of the numbers of food banks, people relying on support from charities. There are many areas where there is neglect, and where there's even structural failure as well, where that's kind of not been picked up in early enough to be able to address. And the thing is that with all of these places, the only thing that really helps to build up places from an economic and social perspective is that leaning into the problem and collective leaning into that problem, and understanding that there are actions that we can take. There are things that we can sit around the table and discuss with lots of different influential people, businesses, organizations who can work together collectively to address those problems and resolve those problems, to help to really lift up those places. So what we tend to do in our places and as part of our place work is to bring together leaders from different sectors and really start to look at how we can build a vision in an area. And that is about local people, local organizations, and local businesses, local councils, really kind of telling us, it's very much about listening more than us doing the talking. It's very much about understanding that the local people are the ones that understand their locality the best, and understand what the problems are, understand what is holding back their area, and really kind of helping them feel empowered to impact on the problem and on the solution, and really kind of being challenging and being quite bold and innovative, and actually owning those solutions as well. So, we are really committed as an organisation to transform lives and to ensure that we can, build a future, build a society that is fairer, more equitable and greener, going forward, and that we can ensure that we treat places, people and the planet in the right way to ensure that everyone can thrive. So we do go into places with a long-term vision to ensure that we can impact on transformative change. And we very much are a convening organisation, and bring everyone to sit around the table, business leaders, politicians, regional authorities, regional mayors, community leaders, anyone that is keen to impact on their locality. We'd like to hear from, and we want to bring them around the table and have that discussion with them. And we are keen to continue building our place presence. So as you can see on that map there, all of the pink ones that are lit up are places where we have presence. And we have ambitions to, within the next 10 years, to reach 50 places where we can have these transformative communities in place. And the areas that we're working on so far, we have around, I think, 16, maybe going on 18 now at the latest count, places where there is someone like me that leads the strategic work and the partnerships. And so that is growing all the time. And our recent additions have been Drumchapel in Glasgow and Aberdeen, I think Southampton and Bristol are some of the new ones that have come on board. So we're really keen on ensuring that we can carry on that legacy of building strong convening partnerships that are cross-sector, that are collaborative, and that have a clear vision for that place that is empowered by local people. And when we go into a place, it's very much about ensuring that we have the right conditions. I suppose it's a bit like, planting something that you've not planted before and understanding kind of what conditions that needs to thrive. So we ensure that there is evidence of need in an area. So we do look at the indices of multiple deprivation and see where localities, where certain towns sit on that. We also look at things like local, regional or governmental investment in those places. So things like the town deals set up, or the levelling up funding that has been made available in the past is one of the key kind of drivers, because as we all know, in order to impact change, you do need to have some money to hand to kind of do things to make change happen. So we ensure that there is funding available from local councils as well, and we expect local councils to be able to match fund what we can raise through businesses. So this is very much a business-led initiative as much as anything, because we want businesses to appreciate that they have a big stake in a place, in an area where they have presence, because that's where their employees come from, but it's also where their customers come from too. And so they need to feel that there is a responsibility that they have to those communities. I think the other thing that we need to bear in mind as well from a business perspective is that most businesses, or most corporate businesses at least, will have ambitions and kind of strategic focus in terms of their how they are performing from a sustainability point of view, in terms of their equality and equity metrics. And in order to drive a lot of that, they need to be looking at their talent pool, and their talent pool inevitably will be from the local area. So they do have both, a vested interest to be engaged in this, but also, there are great rewards for them to be invested in communities as well. And I think
just the last minute or so, if that's okay, Farida.
Sure. Yeah. I think many businesses, that are represented on our regional boards, if they were to speak about their engagements, would be able to share with you what benefits is driven for their own businesses as well. So, like I say, we seek local authorities to match fund what we raise from businesses on those, and then we create a local board for that place as well. And it's very much around community engagement. So we have many VCS sector organizations that are engaged with the work that we do. It's very much focused on engaging in some short-term initiatives in order to demonstrate impact, but also very much focused on long-term sustainability of our work as well. And then we generally go into places and we'll work with all of our stakeholders to create a prospectus, which is our commitment to long-term strategic impact. There are quite a few slides here, and I can maybe share some of these with everybody, or for you to send out later on, but happy to open up to questions.
That would be great. Thank you so much, Farida. Really, really interesting to get a peek into business in the community and some of the work that's happening where you are. And we're into our last 5 or 6 minutes. So I wanted to bring us back to one of the questions. I've spotted yours, Sharon, and I'm wondering, Farida, if you want to take a look at that in the chat, there might be something you can share. But I wanted to bring us back to one of the biggest questions that came up in the Mentimeter, which was, what are the opportunities for shared working between business and the public sector, particularly business and health, but also local authorities? And I wonder if Elizabeth and Farida, if you have views on that, what do you see as the biggest opportunities or ways to connect?
Do you want to go?
Well, in terms of business and community, I mean, like I say, we have presence in about 16 to 18 places currently, and we are always seeking more strategic partners to join us. So we would be very much open to the opportunity to have a conversation with anyone who is interested to work in any of the places we're currently in, or if there's a place that they are in or have presence in and would like to understand, if there's an opportunity to work in those places, then we're really open to having that conversation.
I think one of the biggest opportunities is to really drive forward the neighborhood health agenda and look at businesses as part of the solution, especially in procurement. Start with the low-hanging fruit and align on the reality that we can have societal and business outcomes at the same time. So business outcomes meaning productivity, however that's measured. You can talk about bottom line, you can talk about economic growth, but the reality is that we're community wealth building together. And I think that's really powerful. A good example is Arsenal Football Club in London. I mean, they're doing a tremendous amount with youth in the community, and they are a business. So I'm thinking about those examples and really relishing on the opportunity to grow neighborhoods.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good stuff about Arsenal in the community too before. Interesting example there. And Farida, in 1 minute, have you got any more details of the Drum Chapel project, or is there anything you can pop in the chat for people who are interested?
I don't have a lot of details on it, but I can certainly get more details and share with you to kind of share to the wider network of people that have joined this call. But a lot of our interventions that take place in communities involve businesses, supporting some of the charity organizations with, repairs. Our sustainability work that we're doing is focused on building more resilience in community organizations that support people at the grassroots. And all of our places are all very different, as you can imagine, and are very much about leaning into the needs of that particular community. So the interventions that we're delivering in each of those places are very different too. But we have some generic work that is happening. So For example, in Sheffield, we have a See It, Be It initiative that has been going for about 4 years, which is about taking business volunteers into schools to showcase careers. And through the 4 years that they have engaged in that work, it's demonstrated that where students have at least 4 interventions with business, they're 86% less likely to be not in education or training by the time they reach 16. So you can see the types of impacts that these interventions can have.
That's quite impressive stats and an interesting area of those opportunities to work together. Okay, we're into the last 2 minutes, so we're up against it. Ollie, over to you to just share a brief what's coming up next in the world of HALN.
Thanks, Julia, and thank you, Elizabeth and Farida, for your great presentations. As ever, there is never enough time to dig into these big topics, but I would ask people to look out for the post-event email, because included in that we will have both of the speakers' slides, and we will also include links to a range of other resources that might be helpful for you as you explore this work further. For example, we at HALN have written a blog on how anchor networks are engaging the private sector and what some of the learnings have been based on our conversations with anchor networks that have worked in the private sector. And then there's some 2 resources there that will be useful. So there's the framework for health that Business for Health have developed that Elizabeth was talking about, and Farida didn't get on to mention it, but they have actually gone away and created this amazing private place learning hub at Business in the Community, full of learning modules designed to help people bring together those local partners to take collaborative action to improve the health and well-being of local places. And then the last shout out I'd like to make is next week we will be hosting another one of our HALN Anchor Exchanges. This is a relaxed space for people to come together to chat to other people who are working on their anchor strategies within their organization. So it'll be a chance for you to maybe bring a problem you're currently working on, or if you just want to chat to someone else that's in a similar situation to hear about how they're approaching something, then do come along. And the Amelia will post a link to that sign up in the chat now, as well as in the post-event email. So massive thank you to all our speakers, and the recording and all slides will be sent around in the days to come. And do get in touch if you've got any ideas for how you'd like to keep the conversation going, and we're all ears.
Thanks so much, everyone. Take care, and we'll see you soon.